It's where discipline and challenge meet ease. Really, it meets skill. So when something starts, you just get into that momentum of actually working on something. It creates, it's really a magical feeling. There's no really good way of explanation, but it doesn't feel like work. It feels like play. And in my
Welcome to the PlayThink Podcast, a conscious community podcast of visionaries and creatives here to learn, grow, and collaborate together. A podcast to share experiences that inspire and empower playthinkers like you to embrace your unique passions and talents and share the art of who you are with the world. Come along with me, Courtney Euphoria Phi, on our ride through unfiltered conversations around empowerment, art, creativity, and of course,
Welcome
play.
to the
Let's dive in.
PlayThink Podcast, our very first episode. I'm your host, Courtney Euphoria Phi, the Executive Director for PlayThink University, and I'm super excited to have Paige, the creator of PlayThink and all things PlayThink, here with me for our first conversation. So welcome, Paige.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me and creating PlayThink. So let's just jump right in, and I want to know how PlayThink came about. How did you get here? And I know that may be a hard answer quickly, but if you can just tell our listeners a little bit of how PlayThink was created and how it's grown into the movement that it is.
Yeah. So in 2003 or four, it's hard to, I'm going to say 2004, I was in college freshman year, and I started going to festivals, and I saw somebody hula hooping at both Bonnaroo and All Good Festival, All Good, which no longer exists, unfortunately, because it was a beautiful event. And I saw this woman at All Good in particular, like weaving her arms in and out of the hoop. And I was like, I want to do that. And so I came home and I could find nothing about it because this was in 2004. And I finally found an Etsy store and got this massive hula hoop and taught myself how to hula hoop. There were not YouTube videos at that point in time, or if there were, they were hard to find. And I've got really, hula hooping became my life. It was the first time in my life that I felt confident, that I felt good about myself, that I really could get into the flow of things, both mentally and physically. Absolutely changed my life. And as I got into that hooping journey, I wanted to learn more and more and more. And I started seeking out people to learn from. In 2008 or 9, somewhere in there, I met somebody who was fire hooping, who taught me how to fire hoop. And then I started performing with all kinds of people in the region. I really just, hula hooping was such a massive part of my life for such a long amount of time. And I was traveling to places to learn. So I learned from Shakti Sunfire, old school hoopers. You're going to remember who she is.
I remember Wakarusa days. I think she came and did a workshop, and I think that was one of the times for me that I was like, oh my gosh, this dance flow with the hoop is
Oh, she was
happening.
wild. Yeah. I learned from, who was it? Anna Reichenbach for a while. And I traveled as far as I could. I went to Chicago. I went to Michigan. I kept searching these places out. And at some point I was like, I don't know who else to learn from. And so I brought this up to a friend of mine who owns a farm, Jessa Turner of Homegrown Hideaways. And she said, well, why don't we just throw a festival in the farm and bring people here to teach hula hoop classes? And of course, that wasn't enough for me. So I went ahead and had it to be a flow festival where we had workshops on hula hooping, yes, but also poi, fans, all kinds of movement. And that's how it started.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how, for me in my journey, the hula hoop has sparked everything that I've created with my business and my circus arts career. So I just love how the hoop can unlock so many. Often people ask me, how did you get into fire dancing and juggling and all these other things? I'm like, it all started with a hula hoop, and then it just kind of kept growing and growing and growing from there. So I feel like you can relate to that. Or probably back then you didn't realize the capacity that PlayThink would be at now when you first started this journey, right?
Absolutely not. I had no idea that it would even be what it is today. Then, I mean, in 2012, the first year, we had 115 people, 65 of which were instructors. There was no music. Half of the decor were gray tarps and yellow caution tape. It was an incredibly different experience, but it rocked my world, and I couldn't see myself doing anything else from that point forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you've been to PlayThink and experienced it, you definitely know the magic of it. But for those in the audience and listening that haven't been to PlayThink, what is PlayThink to you? Like what is PlayThink?
I've always had a really difficult time answering that question. I think that it's a little different for everybody. Um, at the heart of it, it's a flow festival. It's a place to learn how to flow in the world. It's a place to learn all kinds of things. In my mind now, the biggest description is it's a place where somebody can be radically seen, heard, and felt as themselves, but can also clearly see where they want to be and to shorten that distance as much as we're capable of, all using music, flow arts, and a safe space.
Yeah, absolutely. And you feel it when you're there, when you're experiencing the workshops, when you're moving, when you're walking around, you feel just the want for growth, the want to like learn and do better and be better and like
Yeah.
expand. You just feel that when you are at this festival. So I just think that's pretty magical. So what made you call it Playthink? Why Playthink?
I don't know.
That's
Um,
valid.
yeah, so there were a lot of years that I balked at the words flow arts pertaining to spinning tools, spinning props, because in my mind, flow is so much more than that. And my example at the time was, if you're in marching band as a high schooler and you are practicing your marching show and then you go do it, there's a lot of times that you would finish the entire show and have no recollection of actually doing it. And that's being in the flow. Or as a writer, if you sit down and you write a story, if you're actually in the flow of writing, you're not going to remember it.
Hmm.
And it's where discipline and challenge meet ease. Really, it meets skill. So when something starts, you just get into that momentum of actually working on something. It creates, it's really a magical feeling. There's no really good way of explanation, but it doesn't feel like work. It feels like play. And in my mind, playthink was another word for flow.
I love that. I love that. I feel like object manipulation and flow arts and juggling can have a divide that doesn't really need to exist.
Absolutely.
Me and my juggling comrade the other day were actually talking about this. He was going to EJC and was talking about how when you go to juggling conventions in Europe, that it's typically like all types of object manipulation, not just jugglers. And I feel like here we have that divide. There's like the juggling, and then there's the flow festivals, and then some even like fire festivals that are like only pertaining to fire versus like. And I feel like PlayThink does a really good job of bringing those together. And I think that's probably attributed to using the choice of words that you did and being mindful of how you were presenting it.
I've always wanted it to be an incredibly inclusive event. Yeah. Inclusive to, all object manipulation, jugglers, fire, kids, really just anybody.
Yeah, yeah. I love it. I love it. So, for those of you who don't know, PlayThink is also a sober festival. So, can you speak a little bit to what that means and why you decided to do that?
This has always been a hard one for me too. It did not start, I did not start the event being like, oh, this is going to be a sober event. It was really more like, I don't want to deal with people's drunkenness. And so I started telling people like, hey, this isn't the place to party. I don't care if you have a couple drinks, but like, this is a belligerence-free zone. That's what I said for a long time. But at
Belligerence
some
free. I
point,
like that.
people don't know what belligerence means. Belligerence can be a wide range of things and have nothing to do with drugs and alcohol.
Yes.
Um, and then I started saying sober mainly because people don't know how to listen unless you use strong words. So I use a strong word to be like, hey, y'all, it's not the place to party. Come and meet yourself and meet your peers. And, if somebody has a beer and we don't see it, I don't care. If somebody goes and smokes a joint at their tent, whatever. I just want it to be a family-friendly place that people are not being belligerent. Like, I want people to be mindful about what they're doing and where they're meeting others. So that's kind of the reason for sober for me. It's like I feel like there's so many distractions in our world from screen time and work and relationships and whatever that it's really hard to actually to meet ourselves and to pay attention to what's going inside. And alcohol, drugs, psychedelics even are a medication that keeps us from meeting. Now, if we're using those tools as medicine in smaller amounts, it can be a little bit different. So I don't feel like there's a clear, solid answer on that. But I want it to be a safe space for everybody. And I think that to a certain degree, that means sober, belligerent free.
I actually think that is a really great answer because what you're doing is you're providing people the space to check in with where their mindset is more so than like, hey, don't do this. You know what I mean? You're like, hey, are you grounded? Are you present? And because if what you're doing is taking you from that, like we don't want that here. And as much as I love big music festivals and big events and having a good time, it changes the atmosphere when you have people who are belligerent and who are like super intoxicated and like causing a scene and things like that.
Yeah.
It definitely changes the experience for everybody attending.
A really awesome side effect of having a sober festival that I did not think of when I started using those words is that we have incredibly minimal trash and waste on site. And it really helps us strive towards our goal of being a zero waste event.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, there's so much that goes with those music festivals. Like I've been to concerts and looked at the field afterward and just seen I mean, it's just covered. There's like a whole layer of it, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like that's not a sustainable way to do this and have fun. So, can you speak to a little bit about how you keep your festivals sustainable and how you keep them good for our planet?
We partner with a company called Zero Waste Event Productions, and they come in and they sort through all of the garbage on site, including compost, and they filter it through recyclables, compostables, or landfill. And then they give us a report on exactly what is, and the amount of recyclable and compostable goods is amazing. I mean, it's just really helped minimize our footprint in the world. But we also try to encourage people to get rid of the waste before they pack. So if you're bringing a box of cereal, maybe only bring the bag and not the box. If use a reusable cup, use reusable dishes, wash your dishes, use cloth napkins instead of paper napkins. So really just encouraging people to start at home and bring it with them.
That's good. That's good because really it starts at home, that all the trash comes from at some point. It makes that spot through here that it can be filtered out a little bit, which will make it be even more likely to be recycled or whatever, you
Exactly.
do with your stuff. And zero waste is always super excellent. Anytime you take anything to them at the festival, they're always so helpful in like sending it to the right place to either be composted or recycled in the proper way. So I've always appreciated that about them. Even if you're not really sure what to do with something, they're so quick to help you out.
Yeah.
So we talked a lot about Playthink Festival and the festival, the very first Playthink, the original, what started all this, is amazing and big. But Playthink as a movement is so much more than just the festival that happens once a year in June, right? So can you speak a little bit to what else Playthink is?
PlayThink is really moving into being more of a positive lifestyle brand. And what that means is that we want to bring modes of creating a more of a high vibe existence for people in a multi-tiered way, starting with the festival. Of course, then we also have PlayThink University, which is like everything at the festival online in a subscription-based service. Then we also have a PlayThink merchandise store that can have anything from crystal-infused water bottles to mantra bracelets, goods that can nourish your brain and body, such as a mushroom cacao mix. We're looking forward to some tinctures, body butters, that kind of thing. We really just want to create an entire PlayThink existence that people can tap into all year round for their entire family.
Yes, and if you haven't had that Nourish cacao mix, 10 out of 10, I highly recommend you snag some of that because it's pretty fabulous. And it goes pretty quick, I do believe. So,
Every
yeah.
batch that we make sells out fast, like day of.
Nice. I love it. I love it. So, can you talk a little bit then about the other events that have
Yeah.
spurted off from this? Because there's this big umbrella of Plaything, but and then the festival and the merch store, but you also have even more arms of the Playthink movement, shall we say?
Absolutely. So a couple of years into doing PlayThink, I realized that there was a big sector of yoga classes. And I was like, okay, I didn't know that Kentucky had a demand for yoga. And it really spurred me to create the Kentucky Yoga Festival. So we're now on its fourth year. It does happen at a different location in Center, Kentucky, which is about 45 minutes from Cave City. And it's a beautiful celebration of yoga and healing and kind of a deeper getting to know yourself experience in comparison to PlayThink, but in a different way. We also have the GodX Initiative, which is a women's empowerment, not just women's empowerment. I don't want to say that. It is a getting in touch with your feminine side, feminine empowerment event, because men and women are very welcome. We encourage people to dress in their goddess attire to really get into tune with that side of themselves. It's more of a soft, flowy gathering. Happens in July, and then we have the Equinox Connection happening in September over the equinox. We try to do it on the full moon. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't, just kind of depending on the time of the month. And it's really nourishing our roots. Its goal is to nourish our roots in community before we hibernate for the winter. And of course, I would be amiss if I didn't mention the Mexico Adventure Retreat that is going to be happening in December. Not this December, but next. And we plan on doing it annually after this year. And it's going to be a way for us to, adventure into ourselves, our inner temples, as well as in the jungles and cenotes of Mexico, because who doesn't need some sun in the middle of the winter?
Absolutely. I was just thinking about that the other day, actually, and I'm like, this time next year, it's gonna be like Tulum time.
It's actually the 4th through the 11th next year, so like we would be in Mexico right now.
Yeah, I was thinking that. So, next year you can join us on the beach if you want.
Also, on a personal note, I definitely planned that event to be on my birthday. I will be in Mexico for my 39th birthday.
Oh, I love that. And I love that you kind of get the ability to be like, all right, how am I going to do my birthday this year? I've wanted to do a retreat because I know you've said that you had wanted to do a retreat for quite some time, and you finally have kind of like pulled the trigger and like decided to make the jump and do that. So I think that's awesome that it's a birthday for you. I think that's perfect.
Tulum is one of my all-time favorite spots. I went there for the first time in 2010 when I went through my yoga teacher training, and I've been back a couple of times, and it's just the most magical and serene place that I want to share it with other people. I want other people to be in the presence of the magic of Tulum, Mexico.
Yeah. Yes, I am excited to be in the magic of them cenotes and the ruins. But yes, absolutely. So Why don't we go ahead and kind of wrap this part up here for the podcast? And for those of you who don't know, we have PlayThink University, which is our online platform for learning all things flow and object manipulation and circus arts. That we will be kind of relaunching in January. There's things on there now, so there's tons of content there available, but there's going to be a lot of fun things in this space, including the second half of this podcast here, where we take a little bit of a deep dive into like some things you can do to grow your career in flow arts, to maybe start an event production company, to learn more about kind of the back end of the work. So if that's something that excites you and interests you, head on over to PlayThink University, where you will find the second half of this, along with workshops on juggling and hula hoop and all kinds of amazing stuff, including some fun ecstatic dance things that we're going to launch and lots of goodies for you. So as we're wrapping this one up, you want to go ahead and let everybody know how they can find you, Paige, how they can connect with you if they would like to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Paige Zen on Facebook. You're welcome to reach out to me and direct message me there. But also on Facebook is, facebook.com/PlayThinkFest, Instagram /PlayThinkFest. Those are the best places to reach me.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. And if anybody has any questions or guests they would like to see on this podcast as we move along, feel free to drop them in the comments. Follow, subscribe, do all those magical things, and we'll see you in PlayThink University. Thank you so much for being here and for watching the very first ever episode of PlayThink Podcast. I am so grateful that you have tuned in, that you've listened, and I hope you head on over to PlayThink University to see the second part of this podcast and to just tell you a little bit more about PlayThink University. It is our monthly subscription-based service where you can dive into all things flow, creativity, art, movement, play, and kind of experience different workshops as if you would at a festival. So for our monthly subscription, there is a 14-day trial where you can go and check it out and see what it's all about. We have unlimited access 24/7 to 70 plus flow and movement and creative PlayThink based videos in our archive already, as well as we launch monthly new releases that come out on all different types of topics, all different types of flow art skill sets. And we have a virtual festival community that is exclusive to our PlayThink University members, where we can connect and collaborate and chat about what our experience is and what it's like at PlayThink University, or maybe ask questions if we kind of get stuck or need some help on something. And not only that, but we're about to be releasing these last parts of the podcast where we're really aiming to give you insight, give you input on the next steps to take on your path, on your journey of movement, of play, of curiosity, of learning, of growing. So there's more. On top of that, we have some ecstatic dance things that are going to be released, some meditation things that are going to be released in there as well. So go over there, check it out. $22 a month keeps you subscribed for the month, gives you access to everything, anytime, anywhere from your phone. And I just wanted to give you a little taste, a little snippet of what it's like for the second half of this podcast. So I'm going to hand it back over to a little insight from Paige. And go like, follow, subscribe, whatever you want to do to engage with us for this podcast, whether it be on Spotify or YouTube. We want to hear from you. So tell us what you want, who you want interviewed, what kind of content you want to see, what you want to see in PlayThink University. We would love to know, and we would love to be here to support you on this journey. And in the meantime, here's a little tip from Paige.
Reach out to people that I know may want to hire performers. And it's taking yourself seriously enough that you know that you're putting in the work and in the dedication that you can be taken seriously by other people. I don't think that other people can take us seriously if we don't take ourselves seriously. So if you wouldn't hire you, somebody else probably won't hire you either.